Hey bees, I'm Marie from Humblebee and Me, and today we are making a beautiful forest facial cleansing balm. And guys, I am so excited about this stuff because it has the most gorgeous creamy consistency, works up into the most beautiful, like milky, creamy, low lather. It's goes onto your face so beautifully, it comes off just gorgeous with no like waxy red. Oh, it's so lovely. This recipe is an extension of a forest-themed sort of collection of recipes that I have been releasing, and so you can find a forest foaming facial cleanser on the blog already, and so if you like to double cleanse with an oil cleanser followed by a foaming cleanser, this is your oil cleanser, and ooh, I love it. The biggest difference between this cleansing balm and other cleansing balms that I've done is that instead of using a combination of thicker butters and a wax of some kind, usually a sea wax, because I find beeswax is too tacky for this sort of thing, I used stearic acid and cetyl alcohol. So I've recently done some experiments on how these really awesome ingredients work to thicken liquid oils, and so I'll throw links to them in the description box below if you want to sort of learn more about them and see how they work. But this reasonably small change has made a huge difference in the end product, and I'm absolutely giddy about it. The rest of the oils are pretty inexpensive, and that is by design because we are effectively just washing these straight down the sink. Really all we're concerned about them being is lipids, and after that we want them to be inexpensive lipids. I do often get questions from people being like, hey, I have a bottle of argan oil, can I use that in my cleansing balm instead of like fractionated coconut oil? It's like, why would you do such a thing? That's like going for a run or something and going to like one of those mud runs in your favorite silk blouse because, you happen to have a silk blouse already and you couldn't be bothered to like buy a cheap t-shirt to go to your mud run. And it's like, no, save the silk blouse, wear it to a job interview, go to Value Village and buy yourself a crummy t-shirt and go trash that. So yeah, these oils are inexpensive, and you can use a different inexpensive oil if you want. I use fractionated coconut oil, but if you wanted to use something like safflower oil or sunflower oil or grapeseed oil or something that you have that you're looking at and being like, that's probably not going to smell so great in like 3 or 4 months. That's also a great choice because you will use a cleansing balm quite quickly because you just down the drain, do that 2 times a day and you go through it pretty quickly. In making this for the video, I tried to speed up the cooling down process by popping it in the freezer. And I gotta say, I'm not in love with this part of the process and probably wouldn't do it again. I do get a lot of questions about like, hey, can I speed up the cooling down process by putting it in the freezer? Like, all right, let's do this. And kind of what happened is the vessel got very cold. Like I needed to still be able to stir the essential oils in it, so I didn't want to leave it in there until the product was frozen solid. So the vessel got very cold, and so what that meant is I stirred it, large parts of it would become solid, but then there'd still be a liquid part, and so then it got to be very lumpy, which made it quite difficult to evenly blend in the essential oils. And I wish I had just been patient and left it on the countertop to cool more evenly so that the whole thing would have been just like a nice, soft, pliable consistency as opposed to sort of having like firmer, chunky, lumpy bits that I then had to like mash and stir. I think in the end it would have been much easier if I had not tried to speed up the cooling down process. So, your mileage may vary maybe. If you used a cold water bath, I think that would have, if you're stirring consistently as it was in like an ice water bath, that would have probably also been a better idea than just being like, just put this in the freezer for a little while. So yeah, there we go. Fun learning experience. This is tied into the foaming forest facial cleanser with the inclusion of French green clay, which is in both of them, and the beautiful essential oil blend, which has spruce and fir for the wonderful coniferous notes, and then we have some oak moss absolute for this just indescribable sort of sweet, beautiful, mellow bass note that's just very irreplaceable. I think you could use benzoin in its place as a kind of okay substitute, but benzoin has a vanilla scent to it that the oak moss doesn't have. I really recommend getting some oak moss absolute if you are kind of an essential oil junkie like I am, and then just a touch of cardamom, just as like a little like, what's that? It's bright, it's spicy, I like it. Since this is all oil based, making it is really simple. It's basically like a melt, cool, stir, pour. I have not included a broad spectrum preservative in this because if you don't get water in it, it doesn't need one. if you are not the kind of person who can be 100% certain that every time you go into this, you're going to do it with a dry hand, please include a broad spectrum preservative, and I'll include some links for some more information about that in the description box below. But yeah, especially if you're going to give it to a friend or something and you don't 100% trust that they're going to remember that their hands need to be dry, it should have a preservative in it, because it can absolutely go all kinds of gross if it does get water in there. But that's the thing, it has to have water in it for it to spoil. So for me, this is the first part of my cleansing routine. So I start with dry, clean hands and then go in there, and then my hands are wet from there on out, but I'm not going back into it. Or you could use a popsicle stick, but yeah, definitely don't go sticking wet hands into this without including a preservative. And if you're not the kind of person who's going to remember the like dry hands thing or dry popsicle stick thing, please include a preservative. And yeah, check the description box below for more information on that. But yeah, that's about the only thing that sort of is a little like, hey, asterisks. So yeah, let's go make some cleansing balm. We're going to begin by combining all of our ingredients, with the exception of the French green clay, in a heat-resistant glass measuring cup. So this is a 1 cup or 250 milliliter glass Pyrex measuring cup. And so we're going to need 5 grams of polo wax, 4 grams of Polysorbate 80, 21.75 grams of fractionated coconut oil, 5 grams of castor oil, 9.5 grams of stearic acid, 2.5 grams of CETYL alcohol, and 1/4 gram of vitamin E. So we're going to get the melting started by putting this in our water bath here. And I'm going to pop this over the heat on about medium heat until everything is melted through. And so the reason we aren't putting the French green clay in now is because I find the stearic acid takes a lot longer to melt than you would think. And so the first time I did this, as it was melting, I kept thinking, oh, it's all good and melted. And then I would see teensy little specks of unmelted stearic acid. And if I'd added the clay already, it would have been very difficult to see those little bits. And then I would have found them when I was using it, which would have been unpleasant. So we're going to make sure everything is super melty first before adding the clay, and then we'll heat that through some more. So this is going to take longer than I think you think it will. So just make sure you don't let your water bath simmer dry and keep an eye on it. All right, so this has been burbling away for about 40 minutes, and there's finally no more dots in there, though I do see a bubble. So we can now add our 1.5 grams of French green clay. Okay, I'm gonna go pop this on the heat again for about another 20 minutes just to get that clay nice and heated through and help remove any sort of potential heat-sensitive contamination that might be in there. And yeah, see you soon. All right, so it's been like 20-30 minutes. This is all melty heated through. So I'm gonna dry this off, and I'm actually gonna just go and put this in the freezer for a little while. And I don't want to freeze it until it sets. I just want to freeze it until this container isn't really warm. Glass has, delightfully high ability to maintain heat, and so this container is going to stay warm for absolutely ages if I don't pop it in the freezer to just sort of speed that along. And given that this is thickened with fatty acids and alcohols instead of waxes, that'll also mean that this is going to take ages and ages to thicken up. So yeah, the freezer will help us kickstart this cooling process. So this was in the freezer for about 6-7 minutes, and the glass is nice and cold, but the bottom is still a little bit warm. So you can see that it is definitely kick-starting that cooling process. So I'm just sort of scraping down the sides as the sort of liquid balm comes into contact with the cool glass. It's solidifying, so you can just sort of use that cool glass to hurry along the cooling process. All right, well, let's add our essential oils. Well, this is still quite pliable. So we've got 4 of them here. We're going to do 5 drops of spruce. This is black spruce, but you could use white. 2 drops of cardamom, 2 drops of oak moss absolute, and 10 drops of fir. All right, I'm gonna transfer this to our container now that it's sort of quite smooth and has our essential oils thoroughly blended in. And then I'm gonna leave it to thicken up overnight. So this container here is a 50 milliliter screw top plastic jar from Humblebee, which is a packaging and mica shop located online, but it's based out of Calgary, which is awesome. I love local businesses here whenever I can support them. And so Ivan set me up with a pretty sweet stash of some of his products, and these great little jars are some of my favorite things from him. And I know they get a lot of attention because they tend to look quite familiar, especially in the black version that he also carries. But yeah, all right, so give that an artisanal twirl and we'll leave that to set up overnight. All right, so it's the next morning and I'm so excited to show you guys the consistency of this balm. So you can see that it's thickened up really nicely. It's all solid in there, but it's so gorgeous. Just like, oh my goodness, it's got a consistency kind of similar to that of Play-Doh. Like it's just, oh, it's so beautiful and creamy and it just spreads out. Oh my goodness, I am absolutely in love with this stuff. And so I wanted to sort of show you with a bit of water here what happens when you blend it with a bit of water. And see, it starts to get all creamy, right? Like it's beautiful and there's like a bit of a low lather there. Like, oh my goodness, it's just, oh, it's so, so beautiful. And then come in here with the microfiber cloth and it just comes right off. Like, this stuff is so, so, so lovely. Oh, it's basically, well, yeah, of course it is. It's a solid cleansing oil and I am so, so smitten with it. It smells so good. I love the consistency of it. It works beautifully. I find that it is not too drying. My first version of it was a little drying, so I tweaked the formula to make it a little bit more gentle and just, oh my goodness. I am so in love with this and I hope you'll make it and fall in love with it too. So thank you so much for joining me while we make some forest cleansing balm. Please check the description box below for the full written recipe with amounts in both metric and imperial, and the links to this recipe on my blog. My blog is where I include information on substitutions, which I get a lot of questions about, so please look there. It's so much easier to communicate all the information about substitutions in writing. And there's also links to all the ingredients and all the equipment and everything, so you can grab everything that you need to make this super awesome cleansing balm. See you next time!